My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. We will establish a minimum baseline tariff of 10%. India, very, very tough, very, very tough. Prime Minister just left. He's a great friend of mine, but I said, you're a friend of mine, but you're not treating us right. China, 67%. That's tariffs charged to the USA. We're going to be charging a discounted reciprocal tariff of 34%. You think of European Union, very friendly. They rip us off. 39%. We're going to charge them 20%.
We're now preparing for further countermeasures to protect our interests and our businesses if negotiations fail.
We are going to fight these tariffs with countermeasures.
The administration's tariffs have no basis in logic, and they go against the basis of our two nations partnership. This is not the act of a friend.
Fear and fury, dilemma and dismay. Countries across the world are coming to grips with Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs, one that upends decades of America's support to globalization and potentially has the power to disrupt and rearrange the global trade order. Trump unveiled sweeping reciprocal tariffs. The levies were bigger than expected. Let's quickly take you through the 5 big takeaways. Trump announced what he calls discounted reciprocal tariffs during a long, drawn-out speech at the White House lawn. Several countries, including China, Vietnam, EU, Japan and India, stare at tariffs in the range of 20 to 40%. India specifically faces a 27% tariff levy. As per the Trump administration, the rates were calculated roughly half of what the US claims these countries impose on American exports, factoring tariffs, non-tariff and monetary barriers, among others. India's Commerce Ministry says they are carefully examining the implications. So what does this really mean for the Indian industry? India's pharma sector can breathe easy as Trump's reciprocal tariffs strike exempts the sector. The IT and jewelry sectors, however, stare at a backlash. From anger and outrage to emergency meetings, Trump's tariffs have evoked a slew of reactions across the world. China calls for Washington to immediately cancel the tariffs, warning that they endanger the global economic development. The European Union is preparing a fresh package of countermeasures as well.
For these reasons, starting tomorrow, the United States will implement reciprocal tariffs on other nations. It's been a long time since we even thought of that. We used to think about it a lot. We didn't think about it for many decades, and you see what's happened. For nations that treat us badly, we will calculate the combined rate of all their tariffs, non-monetary barriers, and other forms of cheating. And because we are being very kind, we're kind people, very kind. But we will charge them approximately half of what they are and have been charging us. So the tariffs will be not a full reciprocal. I could have done that, yes, but it would have been tough for a lot of countries. We didn't want to do that. But such horrendous imbalances have devastated our industrial base and put our national security at risk. I don't blame these other countries at all for this calamity. I blame former presidents and past leaders who weren't doing their job. They let it happen. And they let it happen to an extent that nobody can even believe. That's why, effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles.
All right, our managing editor, Shireen Bhan, is joining us now from Vijay Chowk. Shireen, we had been trying to get a pause on these reciprocal tariffs with concessions for the United States. That has not cut ice with the US administration. Will a bilateral trade deal, even if we sign it, will that work in putting these tariffs on hold? What's your view?
Well, we just don't know at this point in time, Parikshit, and that's one of the many questions that we don't have an answer to. By the way, I'm standing at the heart of Delhi's political corridor. This is where we have the North Block right behind me, the Finance Ministry, the Commerce Ministry right next door, and of course the Indian Parliament here as well. And policymakers across governments, including of course our government, are going to be going over the impact and the implications of the Trump tariff tariffs announced overnight. Now, as far as India is concerned, as you rightly pointed out, India was hoping for the best case scenario that, look, we are already in active dialogue and in discussion as far as a bilateral trade agreement is concerned. So the hope was that even if the tariffs were announced and they were to impact India, perhaps there could have been a suspension on the rollout as far as the tariffs were concerned. But that has not been the case. India has not been singled out. The tariffs will apply on India like they will on the rest of the world where the Trump tariffs come into effect. The hope now is that perhaps there can be a speeded up bilateral trade agreement. Look, fall is when the expectation is that we should have something concrete in place. But again, the view is that perhaps if we speed up negotiations, there could be the possibility of some sort of change. Remember, even in the White House, in its statement, it has said that if negotiations with a partner or reciprocal action with a partner to assuage and allay concerns of the U.S. are on board, then the U.S. may consider, favorably what course of action it will take. So all of this is up in the air, but what is a fact as of today is that there is a 27% tariff. And to be clear, while we heard the President Trump there talk about reciprocal tariff, this is not reciprocal in the way that we expected it to be in February when the Trump administration had put forward a broad calculation of how these tariffs would be calculated. It's very, very different as of today. So this is a global world order that is in reset and a global world order that is in flux and volatility. And I think everyone is measuring the impact at this point in time and assessing what way to go. In fact, that is what the Commerce Ministry has said. The Commerce Ministry, in its statement, by the way, has not spoken about the fact that they have asked the U.S. to roll back the tariffs. They have spoken about the fact that they are engaging in assessing the impact with all stakeholders, and they're hopeful that the BTA will provide a road forward, a path forward, as far as the negotiations with both sides are concerned. But there's plenty to talk about in terms of sectoral impact. Hormuz has been poring over the fine print to understand who is going to be hit and who perhaps gets a little bit of a breather, a reprieve at this point in time. Hormuz.
A fairly resilient reaction coming in from the Indian markets today, and considering how the start was supposed to pan out, you would take this session with both hands. But as the session went by, there was a very clear demarcation between the winners and the losers of Donald Trump's tariff announcements, the 27% reciprocal tariffs that were imposed on India. And Donald Trump mentioned that he had mentioned to PM Modi that although he's a very good friend, you don't treat us well, and hence we'll be charging you half of what you charge us, and hence the reciprocal tariff imposition. But one of the sectors that took a beating in today's trade was IT, and it was the mid-cap IT stocks that took it on the chin in today's session, be it Persistent, Coforge or KPIT Tech, falling up to 10%. And it is not because of any tariff-related concerns, but because of this tariff imposition, the rising fears of a recession in the United States, which is a key market for these IT companies, is the result of why these stocks took a beating in today's session. Another sector that took a beating, we don't talk about that sector that much, were the shrimp exporters, and it was stocks like Avanti Feeds and Apex Frozen Foods that at one point were down almost 18% in today's trade. India, of course, is one of the largest shrimp exporting countries to the US, and Incred Research has analyzed that in case these tariffs remain in place, the shrimp import duty will now rise up to as high as 45%. So a negative reaction for these shrimp exporters as well. And some of the winners, though, in today's session, one very clear winner was the pharma sector, and it was the Nifty Pharma Index that was an outperformer today. Most of the stocks ending higher, although off the highs of the day, but still ending higher. The question only remains is for how long, because there are investigations that are in progress, and that leaves the window open for any future tariff levy on the pharma sector. And lastly, another winner that emerged in today's session was the garment and textile companies, be it the likes of Trident, be it the likes of Arvind, Gokaldas Exports, all of them seeing healthy gains in today's session. And that's not because they were exempt from any form of tariffs, but the competitive nations were the ones that were charged a lot more in comparison to India, be it China, be it Vietnam, be it Bangladesh. All of them charged anywhere between 40 to 50% in terms of reciprocal tariffs. So that gave India a competitive advantage, and that is why you saw healthy gains in these names. So clear winners and losers. It will be interesting to see how this trend sustains from here on.
Let's get you a first pulse check of India Inc. Joining us on the program to take the discussion forward on the impact and the implications of the Trump tariffs is Anant S. Iyer, Director General, Confederation of the Indian Alcoholic Beverage Companies, Sudhir Sekhri, the Chairman, Apparel Export Promotion Council, Rajiv Nath, the Forum Coordinator of the Indian Medical Device Industry, and Ashok Chandak, the President of the India Electronic and Semiconductor Association. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on the program. Let me start by getting a check from you, Sudhir Sekhri, as far as the apparel and textile business is concerned, because, you're not exempt like the pharma sector is, so the tariffs come into effect as far as the apparel sector is concerned. But the hope and the belief or the hypothesis is that since we're better off when it comes to tariff imposition within the region, could this be beneficial to India? Lay out the best case for us.
Okay, yeah, first of all, now that the cat is out of the bag, there is a sense of relief in the sense that, we at least know where we are heading and how we fare vis-a-vis our competition. Now, see, as far as apparel is concerned, we really stand to gain a bit when it comes to our competition, because be it Bangladesh or be it China, their tariffs are anything 10% to 20% higher than those imposed on us. However, I think that is seeing it in a very narrow sense, because what is happening here is the US importers, they've already started asking for discounts and cancellations. Now, this is a big issue for us, and this needs to be addressed by the government. They have to take it up with the government there, or, like China did, when 10% tariff was imposed on China, many retailers, they started pushing manufacturers to reduce prices. And that's when the China government stepped in, and that they said they warned these retailers that they'd be blacklisted if they continue with this kind of a thing. So that is one part of it. The second part is
I just want to interrupt you there. I want to interrupt you there because what you're saying is very important. So I want to understand this for the benefit of everybody watching. You're saying that order cancellations have already started, and the call and the ask for discounts have already started on account of the tariff imposition, or even before the tariff imposition?
Okay. Well, actually, the discussion started last week. And now that the tariffs, it's now clear what it is. So discounts, they've started canceling orders. And in fact, last night we received a message from buyers asking for discounts. And some buyers are also asking for postponement.
So in the near term then, Sudhir, what should we expect? Because, as you pointed out, and I that's what I've been caveating as well, that, this business of what happens to the region and how much higher the region is us versus India, and whether that benefits us or not is a more medium-term aspect. But in the short to near term, what will the impact be? What is the hit likely to be? Have you done any calculations on the back of the announcement that's happened overnight?
Yes, like I said, in the immediate term, this is what they're asking. But obviously, we cannot, the kind of discounts they're asking, anything from 15 to 20%, that is definitely not workable. We don't work on very 5-6% net profit, and we definitely cannot afford this. So we have to take a stand, and we'd like this government to support us on that. Now, coming to the other aspect, of course, yes, we will become competitive when it comes to our neighbors. But let's not forget that there are many other countries where the US is buying garments from those countries, but they're not buying much because of the higher cost of production. Now, let's take Turkey as an example. Now, Turkey has they've been subject to a tariff of 10% only. So, which means the difference between Turkey and India is today 17%. Now, the 17% will more than offset the higher cost of production in Turkey. So, obviously, I think a lot of business might move to Turkey. Similarly, Germany, even the European countries where the tariff is now 20%, there is a differential of 7%. Maybe that 7% may not offset the difference in cost of production. But look at the NAFTA countries, Dominican Republic, for instance, Egypt, Jordan. Egypt has been hit with 10%. So they are 17% lower than us. Dominican Republic, 10%. Okay. A lot of American production is still being carried out in DR. So that is going to, the DR is going to gain, and a lot of business is going to move. So, it's very difficult to predict what exactly is going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months. But immediately this is the negatives that we see. This is the downside we see. The upside is, yes, okay. We call Bangladesh, China, Vietnam, Cambodia, Pakistan.
Yeah.
They are competitors. When we talk about competition, we only name these 5-6 countries. We don't even talk about DR or Turkey. So, well, we are much better off than these countries. But is that a consolation? I mean, that's the big question.
Let me also go across to Rajiv Nath, Forum Coordinator at the Association of Indian Medical Device Industry. Mr. Nath, many thanks for joining us. The pharmaceutical sector at this point in time is exempt, so there is a sigh of relief there, but not so for the medtech sector. What will the impact be?
It looks slightly detrimental to us, but I think business people have to look for windows of opportunity, because unlike apparels where you can move things around very rapidly, for quite some time, USA has been looking at diversifying its supply chain of medical devices to address its healthcare security needs, like India has been doing also post-COVID. So I think that is more strategic in mind. So Indian manufacturers have to see product lines where USA is wanting to shift away from Mexico or from China into suppliers like India. And this may be an opportunity for us over here to take forward. So yes, domestic manufacturing.
Well, that's the medium to the long-term consequences. But what about the near term, Mr. Nath? In the near term, with the imposition of this 27% tariff, what will the impact be on medtech manufacturers?
Well, I would say in the short term, where we are competitive and ahead of the competition from other countries, that will be maintained. There should be no immediate short-term concerns over there. The buyers will, of course, have to absorb the higher costs. So it's going to be a pinch for them. For us, tariff is not the main concern. Of a higher concern for medical device industry is the non-tariff market access costs. The cost to get a US FDA approval varies from $10,000 to $500,000, depending upon the risk classification of the product. That is for the private healthcare market. And to access the public healthcare market, that is nearly impossible because of the Buy American policy, and we're not allowed to take part in the bids for the American government purchases over there, because we are not partners to the trade agreements with USA over there. So it is the non-tariff issues our government basically has to negotiate on our behalf in the bilateral agreements going forward. And we do hope, like they've seen some reprieve for pharmaceuticals, maybe they can consider a reprieve also for medical devices being healthcare products.
Well, reprieve or not, we don't know. But let me ask you very quickly, what is the quantum of exports to the US at this point in time? And do you believe that that is likely to see an impact on account of the imposition?
So currently we are exporting high quality consumables, disposables, and some electronics to the tune of about nearly $500 million over there. And we import from USA nearly $1.5 billion worth of goods. So the imports are double that from USA. So in that respect, yes, this policy is going to give an asymmetrical advantage to the US companies who are accessing the Indian market. Interestingly, the biggest market for Indian medical devices is USA, and also the biggest suppliers to India is USA in medical devices.
Yeah. Yes, and this will, of course, be something that I guess both sides will take up, even as far as the bilateral treaty is concerned. But let me go back across now to bring a view there from the Indian Alcoholic Beverage Association. Joining us now is Anant Iyer. Ms. Iyer, many, many thanks for joining us. We've already seen that cut by India on bourbon whiskey ahead of the Trump tariffs coming in, with the hope that perhaps that would assuage and allay some concerns that the U.S. had. But the tariffs have come in. Nevertheless, take me through the impact that you see.
Yeah, Sireen, thanks a lot for having us on your channel. We are still awaiting some clarity on what will be the exact tariff, on spirits as well as wines. Currently, India has only reduced, its duty on bourbon to 100%. Our fear is that, it's not so much from the US, because the exports from US into India, the imports into India are about, $24 to $25 million, which is very small when you compare it to the overall imports, of spirits and wines from the other parts of the world, especially, the United Kingdom, EU, and other countries. So our fear is that, there are other FTAs now in the, on the table, and those countries should not use, whatever concessions we give to the US as a benchmark for, discussions, because that doesn't safeguard the interests of our members and our industry. As you know, our industry is a state subject. We face a whole host of challenges. And the cost of operations that we have in India, right, are at least, at least 50 to 75% more than what it is in any developed country, or even in the middle kind of, developing or, developed countries, in just play production costs, input costs, etc. So we have our own challenges, and we have already given, our representations to the concerned ministries, including our nodal ministry, which is the Ministry of Food Processing, and, requesting them that, yes, they should safeguard our interests. And we have ourselves recommended, as an industry, a staggered, reduction of customs duties over a period of 10 years. So it's not that, we haven't done it, but to have a very drastic cut may, set the cat among the pigeons, as it were.
Yes, because there is a negotiation underway with the EU as well. And of course, that is going to be one of the items there, of course, will be wine and spirits will be up for discussion and debate. And your fear is that if India cuts on this, just as we have done as far as bourbon whiskey is concerned, that will open up the room for negotiation there as well. Let me bring in Ashok Chandra, the president of the Indian Electronic and Semiconductor Association, into the conversation. Mr. Chandra, many thanks for joining us. Very quickly, the near-term impact, the short-term impact of the tariff imposition, and of course, eventually the silver lining as well, but the near-term impact.
I don't see any major near-term impact, except for the fact that whatever exports we do to United States, almost like $12 billion of electronics, if there is a short-term demand reduction in US because of the prices going up for the consumers, that's the only impact I would see. But India is well placed as of now compared to the other electronics and semiconductor exporting countries, such as China, Vietnam, Taiwan, Thailand, as well as Mexico. So overall, we are, I would call, at a positive edge. And it depends on India now, how do we make use of the opportunity that is available. And I want to add one point over here, that recently one policy was announced on PLI for electronic components. And I call this as one of the winning trio for India now. The PLI for electronic components, there is a PLI running for electronics manufacturing, and there is a Semicon India program. All three put together creates a very good combination of a value addition for electronics manufacturing. And India need to capitalize on these policies and ramp up faster. So short term, no major issue. Long term, yes, maybe United States electronics manufacturing industry would get developed. But still, I would call the demand in US for electronic goods is tremendous. It's quite huge. It's almost like a $500 billion. So we will still have a huge opportunity to grow forward and expand.
Well, that is the hope, that as far as the electronic sector is concerned, this could be a silver lining. This could be an opportunity as we see significant tariffs being imposed on the likes of China, Vietnam, etc. But of course, in the near term, as the gentleman was pointing out, the fear is what will the tariffs do to global demand? What will the tariffs do to global growth? Is the U.S. possibly headed into a recession? That is now an issue up for discussion and debate. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC-TV18 for the first pulse check of India Inc. on the Trump tariff imposition, what it means for India and its different sectors in the near, medium and long term. We are going to take a break here. But we will continue with Trump Watch and the tariff plan right after this. Stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. Big news breakers coming up.